In today's lesson, we will be going over exponential functions. An exponential function is a function of the form y equals a times b to the x. The difference in an exponential function and a linear or quadratic function is that your variable is an exponent, hence exponential function. Couple things, a cannot be 0, and b must be greater than 0 and cannot be 1. The exponent will always be a variable. So let's take a look at an exponential function. The first function we have is y equals 2 to the x. Something you will know about exponential functions is that they grow or decay very, very quickly because we have an exponent. So when I plug in, if I use my graphing calculator and I put y equals 2 to the x, you can use your graphing calculator or your Desmos calculator. If I were to plug in these numbers for x, 2 to the 0, anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. So if you go to 2 on the x value, you would be if you go to 0, you would be at 1. If you put in a 1, 2 to the first power is just 2, so that would be here. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. So, and then if you go into the negatives, you can continue on. This is for if b, our base, is 2. So let's take a look at what happens if our base is not 2. What if we change the base? So this was our original function. If we change the base for b, as b gets bigger, our exponential function, as you can see, when it's 5 to the x, it's a little bit more steep. It's going to climb faster, and then 15 to the x, it's really like hooks up into a straight line. So as b gets bigger, our function grows more rapidly, or you can say grows faster. We did say that b could be a value. So in our original, b has to be greater than 0. So that means b can never be a negative number, and it cannot equal exactly 1. But there are a lot of numbers between 0 and 1. So think about your decimals. If b is 0.8 to the x, you notice as it gets closer to 1, we have a more flat line, but b is decreasing. So from the top left of my graph, it is going down and to the right. Whereas when b is bigger than 1, it is increasing as we move towards the positive x values. When b is between 0 and 1, my function is going to be decreasing or decaying. The closer I get to 0, the steeper my line, or the faster it's decreasing. The reason why this happens, if you think about this, let's say you had 1/2 squared. So that's right between 0 and 1. This would be 1/2 times 1/2, which would be 1/4. Now, let's say I had something smaller, more towards 0. So let's say I had 1/10 squared. This is 1/10 times 1/10, which is actually 1/100th, which is way smaller. It's like 1 penny than 1/4. Okay, so fractions, actually, when we raise them to an exponent, they're going to get much, much smaller. Next, we're going to see what the impact A has on a graph. we are going to say that the value of b is fixed at 3. Okay, so b is going to be 3 to the x. When a is 1, we just have a very standard normal curve. When a is 5, I want you to pay close attention to something. A was 1. Here was our y-intercept. When a is 5, here's our y-intercept. When a is 10, here's our y-intercept. So a larger value of a equals a larger y-intercept. The greater my value of a, the greater my y-intercept. Let's go ahead and talk about what happens if a is negative. As you could probably imagine, we are going to totally flip this over, because if a is going to be our y-intercept, a is negative, then it has to cross at that negative y-intercept. So we have -1, -1. -5 as a, -5 as my y-intercept. -10, -10. So a is going to be our y-intercept, or another word is going to be our initial value. A lot of times when we talk about exponential functions, we talk about money or bacteria, so we need to know how much we started with. On a quiz, you may have to match an equation when you're given a graph. The easiest way to do that is going to be to use your graphing calculator. So I could go to y equals 2. I use this up arrow, the caret, to the x. And I am going to hit second graph to get a table. And I want to make sure that my table matches the graph. So I want to check my y-intercept. Y-intercepts are when the x value is 0. You can also use Desmos to graph.